Listen to me carefully. There will be days when you don't feel like getting up. There will be mornings when your alarm rings and every part of your body tells you, stay in bed. There will be nights when you're exhausted, frustrated, and if you understand that, if you truly understand that, you will never look at your life the same way again. Because somewhere out there right now, there is someone who is more talented than you, someone who learns faster than you, someone who is naturally stronger than you, someone who has more money than you, someone who has better connections than you, someone who started earlier than you, someone who seems to have everything you wish you had. But here's the part they don't tell you. Talent means nothing I have the discipline to use it. Potential means nothing if you don't have the discipline to develop it. Dreams mean nothing if you don't have the discipline to work for them when the dream stops feeling exciting. And that is why you should stop obsessing over who is ahead of you. Stop looking at people who seem more gifted. Stop asking yourself why they have more. Stop comparing your chapter 1 to somebody else's chapter 20. Instead, ask yourself one question: can I become more disciplined than I was yesterday? Because if the answer is yes, you still have a chance. A massive chance. A life-changing chance. Think about the most dangerous person in the room. It isn't always the most talented person. It isn't always the smartest. It isn't always the strongest. Sometimes it's the person who simply refuses to stop. The person who wakes up and does the work. The person who keeps going when the excitement disappears. The person who doesn't need applause. The person who doesn't need someone standing behind them saying, come on. The person who has learned how to tell themselves, do it anyway. That person is dangerous because they don't depend on feelings, they depend on commitment. And that's what discipline really is. Discipline is doing what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like doing it. Read that again in your mind. You don't need to feel ready. You don't need to feel confident. You don't need to feel motivated. You need to move, because motivation is an emotion, and emotions change. One day you're inspired, the next day you're exhausted. One morning, you believe you can conquer the world. The next morning, you question everything. If your progress depends on how you feel, your progress will always be inconsistent. But discipline says, I don't care how I feel today. I gave myself a promise, and I am keeping it. That is the difference. Maybe you've been waiting for motivation, waiting for the perfect morning, waiting for the right opportunity, waiting until you feel confident, waiting until life becomes easier, waiting until you have more money, waiting until people support you, waiting until you finally believe in yourself. But what if that day never comes? What if the perfect moment doesn't exist? What if the only thing standing between you and the life you want is your willingness to start before you're ready? Because most people don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they repeatedly negotiate with themselves. 5 more minutes. I'll start tomorrow. I'll do it Monday. I've had a difficult week. I deserve a break. I'm too tired. I'll work harder when things settle down. And sometimes those excuses sound reasonable. That's what makes them dangerous. One excuse doesn't destroy your future, but thousands of tiny excuses, repeated day after day, can quietly destroy a dream. You don't notice it happening. That's the scary part. You don't wake up one morning and suddenly become unsuccessful. You become unsuccessful through small decisions. One skipped workout, one ignored opportunity, one unfinished project, one wasted evening, one more hour scrolling, one more day procrastinating, one more promise broken to yourself, and then another and another. Until one day you look in the mirror and realize you became the person you promised yourself you would never become. But listen, there is another side to that story. The same way small bad decisions compound, small disciplined decisions compound too. One workout, 1 page, 1 hour of focused work, 1 healthy meal, 1 difficult conversation, 1 early morning, 1 night where you choose your future over entertainment, 1 day where you keep your promise, then another, and eventually, those small decisions become your identity. You stop saying, I am trying to become disciplined. You start saying, I am disciplined, and that changes everything. There is a version of you that exists right now, a stronger version, a more focused version, a more confident version, a version that doesn't need constant validation, a version that wakes up with purpose, a version that can walk through difficult days without collapsing, a version that can look at failure and say, "You didn't destroy me, you trained me." That person isn't created in one dramatic moment. That person is built quietly, one decision at a time, and nobody sees most of it. Nobody sees you waking up early. Nobody sees you studying when everyone else is sleeping. Nobody sees you practicing the same skill for the 100th time. Nobody sees you working on yourself while your friends are having fun. Nobody sees the sacrifices. Nobody sees the lonely nights. Nobody sees the moments when you almost quit, but you see them. And one day, the world will see the result. People will call you lucky. They'll say you're naturally talented. You make it look easy. You've always been good at this. And you'll smile because you'll remember every invisible hour. You'll remember the mornings nobody knew about, the failures nobody witnessed, the rejection, the doubt, the nights you wanted to give up. And you'll know something they don't. It wasn't talent. It was repetition. It was consistency. It was discipline. Look at any great achievement in human history. Behind almost every extraordinary result is an ordinary action repeated an extraordinary number of times. That's the secret people don't like hearing. Because we love stories about overnight success. We love the moment someone becomes famous. We love the championship. We love the transformation. We love the success story. But we don't love the boring part. We don't love the repetition. We don't love doing the same thing when nobody is clapping. We don't love practicing fundamentals. We don't love waiting. We don't love you being bad at something before becoming good. But that boring part is where greatness is built. You cannot skip the process. You cannot cheat the process. You cannot negotiate with the process. You have to go through it. And discipline is what keeps you moving through the part of the journey that isn't exciting. Talent loves excitement. Discipline loves consistency. Talent says, I can do this. Discipline says, I will do this every day. Talent says, I am naturally good. Discipline says, I will get better. Talent says, I don't need to work as hard. Discipline says, I will outwork my old self. Talent looks at the mountain and asks, how quickly can I reach the top? Discipline looks at the mountain and says, one step, then another, and another. That's how mountains are climbed, not with one giant leap, but with thousands of steps nobody celebrates. And your life is exactly the same. You don't change your life in one day. You change the direction of your life in one day. Then you repeat that direction long enough, and eventually your entire life changes. Maybe right now you're disappointed in yourself. Maybe you've started something and quit. Maybe you made promises to yourself and broke them. Maybe you've wasted months. Maybe you've wasted years. Maybe you're looking at your life and thinking, I should be further by now. If that's you, listen closely. Don't use your past as an excuse to destroy your future. You cannot change yesterday, but you can make today different. You don't need to fix your entire life tonight. You need to win the next decision. That's it. Win the next decision. When your alarm rings, get up. When you don't feel like training, train. When you don't feel like studying, study. When you want to procrastinate, start. When you're tempted to quit, take one more step. When your mind says you can't, answer it with action, not words, action. Because every time you keep a promise to yourself, you build self-respect. And every time you break a promise to yourself, you weaken your trust in yourself. Think about that. Confidence isn't always something you find. Sometimes confidence is something you earn. You earn it by proving to yourself, I can trust me. I said I would do it, and I did. I said I would wake up, and I woke up. I said I would finish, and I finished. I said I wouldn't quit, and I didn't. That is how confidence is built, not by standing in front of a mirror saying, I am confident, but by repeatedly doing difficult things until your mind finally says, I know what I'm capable of. And here's where most people lose. They expect discipline to feel good. It doesn't always. Sometimes discipline feels terrible. Sometimes discipline feels lonely. Sometimes discipline feels unfair. Sometimes you will work hard and see no results. You will train and your body won't change immediately. You will study and still fail the test. You will build a business and nobody will buy. You will create and nobody will notice. You will improve and people may still criticize you. And that's where your discipline gets tested, because it's easy to work when you're getting rewarded. The real test is whether you continue when the reward is delayed. Delayed gratification. That is one of the most powerful weapons you can develop. The ability to say, I could have this pleasure now, but I'm choosing something greater later. I could sleep, but I'm choosing my goal. I could scroll, but I'm choosing my future. I could quit, but I'm choosing growth. I could take the easy road, but I'm choosing the road that makes me stronger. That's discipline. And every time you choose the harder right thing over the easier wrong thing, you are training your mind. You're teaching yourself, I am in control. You don't need to become perfect. Understand this. Discipline is not perfection. You will have bad days. You will miss workouts. You will procrastinate sometimes. You will lose focus. You will make mistakes. You will have moments where you fall back into old habits. That's life. The difference is a disciplined person doesn't turn one bad day into a bad month. They don't say, I messed up, so everything is ruined. They say, I messed up, now I'm back. They return, they reset, they continue. That's what makes them dangerous. They don't never fall, they just don't stay down. There will come a day when you have to choose comfort or growth, excuses or responsibility, temporary pleasure or long-term purpose, fear or courage, the person you are today or the person you could become. And nobody can make that decision for you. Not your parents, not your friends, not your teacher, not your partner, not your boss, not society, you. Your life is being shaped by the decisions you make when nobody is forcing you. That's the battlefield, not the gym, not the office, not the classroom. The real battlefield is inside your mind. Every morning, two voices will speak. One says, stay comfortable. The other says, get up. One says, tomorrow. The other says, today. One says, you've done enough. The other says, one more. One says, people will laugh. The other says, let them. One says, what if you fail? The other says, what if I succeed? And every day, you decide which voice gets stronger. So stop waiting to feel motivated. Stop waiting for someone to save you. Stop waiting for the perfect conditions. Stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for confidence. Stop waiting for life to become easier. Start now. Start small, but start. Because you don't need to see the entire staircase. You only need to take the next step, and then the next, and then the next. Until one day you turn around and realize how far you've come. The person who once struggled to wake up early now wakes up without thinking. The person who couldn't focus for 20 minutes now works for hours. The person who was afraid of failure now sees failure as feedback. The person who needed everyone else's approval now trusts their own direction. The person who used to quit now finishes. That's transformation, not becoming someone else, becoming the strongest version of yourself. And remember this, the world will always have talented people. There will always be someone faster, someone smarter, someone richer, someone more experienced, someone with more opportunities. But you have something they cannot control, your consistency. They can't stop you from showing up. They can't stop you from learning. They can't stop you from practicing. They can't stop you from improving. They can't stop you from getting back up. And if you keep doing that, eventually your consistency becomes an advantage so powerful that talent alone cannot compete with it. Because talent may give someone a head start, but discipline keeps you in the race. And sometimes the person who starts last is the person who finishes first. Not because they were gifted, but because they refuse to stop. So tonight, make yourself a promise, not a dramatic promise, not something you say because you're emotional after watching a motivational video. Make a real promise, a quiet promise, a promise only you know about. Tell yourself, I am done betraying my own potential. I am done making excuses. I am done waiting for motivation. I am done comparing myself to everyone else. I am done quitting every time things get difficult. In May, I will show up, I will work, I will learn, I will fail, I will get back up, I will keep going. And tomorrow comes, don't just remember these words, prove them. Because your life does not change because you listen to a powerful speech. Your life changes when you turn those words into behavior. The speech ends, the music fades, the screen goes dark, and then you are alone with your choices. That's where it begins. That's where discipline begins. That's where your new life begins. Not tomorrow, now. Because somewhere inside you, there is a version of yourself that is waiting for you to stop making excuses, waiting for you to stop doubting, waiting for you to stop asking whether you are talented enough, waiting for you to finally understand you don't need to be the most talented person in the room. You need to be the person who refuses to stop improving. You need to be the person who keeps showing up. You need to be the person who works when nobody is watching. You need to be the person who chooses discipline over comfort again and again and again. Because one day, your habits will speak louder than your dreams. Your results will speak louder than your excuses. Your character will speak louder than your words. And the person you become will be the evidence of every decision you made when nobody was watching. So remember this sentence. Remember it when you're tired. Remember it when you're afraid. Remember it when you fail. Remember it when nobody believes in you. Remember it when you feel like quitting. Talent may open the door, but discipline keeps you walking through it. And if you are willing to keep